and that number is climbing as I stand here and speak to you. And that's not even why I write about you, Ya Habibti, Ya Gaza. I don't want people to feel pity. I want anger that bleeds movement. I want people to feel what it feels like when the lights go out and when colonized flames kill children. And when people are strangled but keep living because they have to. And how the land pulses out resistance. And how pink plastic flowers sit on top of televisions as if nothing is wrong. And I want people to understand that the earth and ocean are important, and that salt water runs through our veins, indigenous to that land. I want people to feel the defiance of the busy streets of this bed, to smell your sumud as it billows out from underneath the smoke, saying that we will not be moved. People to watch the palm trees of Deir el-Balah dance to the notes of our Mediterranean wind, but never snap, as the earth supports what is most important. And Ya Habibti, Ya Gaza, I want people to listen to you when you yell at the so-called United States, Ya America, and tell them to get out of our way. Liberation will come, and is coming from our Palestinian people, from 48 to the West Bank, to people in exile, and of course from you, Ya Gaza. America, just get out of the way. And no, I am not saying that the American people cannot and should not do anything. The American people have power to pressure the government to not take sides in a liberation struggle where there are no sides. Pressure the government to stop funding the Zionist occupation. And as we stand here, people are rising up. All of Palestine is rising up. Talk about you today, Ya Gaza, Ya Habibti, Ya Gaza. And how can I even tell people about you when they kicked me out so long ago? And I know it's different now. And when I ask you, Gaza, you always say everything is fine. And I know that it's not. I know that it's not. And I cannot make people feel the terror of a bomb not get dropped, of tears that fall, realizing that from here I feel helpless. And I can't tell you how it feels to know a place so well that so many people only see a distorted racist video camera. And I know you, Gaza, like a relative who hurts every day. And we fear you won't last long, and we hang on to your every breath as you fight, and you fight harder, and breathe as deeply as you can, and bat your eyes when they try and tell you you don't have much time. And I speak about you because you are my everything. And the sound of your name is the sound of a rocket dancing through the sky in resistance. And I have to speak about something that we cannot admit may not last forever unless we fight alongside you and lift up your people's voices. Ya Habibti, Ya Gaza, Ya Habibti, you exist inside each and every one of us, and we cannot forget you even if we wanted to. Thank you, and free Palestine. Thank you so much. Let's give one more round of applause for Gaza. Right. Our next speaker is Lana Habash from the Palestinian community of Boston. Lana is a Palestinian organizer from the Anti-Colonial Solidarity Network. Her father is from Jaffa in the 48 occupied Palestine, and her mother is from Ramallah. And
my apologies.
Hi y'all, can you hear me okay? Before I begin, I just want to say at the outset, anyone engaged in the struggle for a free Palestine must also be engaged in the struggle to decolonize this land we are standing in now.
Black Power movement said that the militant is someone who defends himself, his family, his home, and his dignity. He does not introduce violence into a racist social system. The violence is already there, has always been there, and it is precisely this unchallenged violence that allows a racist social system to perpetuate itself. Many of us here know what colonial violence has looked like in Palestine. We just commemorated the 73rd anniversary of the Intifada, when in 1948 Zionists from Europe, they colonized 78% of our land to create the state of Israel. They did this with 70 massacres. Not 70 massacres just to eliminate the people, but 70 massacres to terrify the people. Massacres where they tied a Palestinian man to a tree and set him on fire, or forced women and men back into their homes that were then blown up with them inside. Zionist forces destroyed 530 villages in this way. 15,000 Palestinians murdered. 780,000 forcibly expelled. Then they gave us apartheid laws. Then they invaded and occupied the rest of historic Palestine. Then they built an apartheid wall that was really an annexation wall meant to steal more land again. Then they imposed a 14-year starvation blockade on Gaza and invaded Gaza multiple times, killing thousands of Palestinians, injuring tens of thousands, and displacing hundreds of thousands. They did this to stop our resistance from stopping settlement expansion. This is what colonial violence looks like. Now, how are we going to support the Palestinian people who are fighting it? Malcolm X said, land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom. Everything we do as a community to challenge colonial violence must center this basic fact of liberation. Israel has done everything it can to distract us from the idea of land. And even solidarity work on this continent has at times incorporated some of Israel's colonial frameworks of distraction to fracture our community. We as Palestinians are told that we are Israeli Arabs fighting for equal rights in Israel, or Palestinians from the occupied territories fighting for refugees fighting for the right to return to a land that is controlled by our oppressor, or Gazans fighting for an end to the siege and blockade, as if each of these groups was a different community with a different agenda. But what is happening right now in Palestine, family, what is happening right now in Palestine, it is historic. You are watching history. It is unprecedented. Palestinians are challenging. I'm here today to amplify this historic message from Palestine. We are one land. And we will not stop till our land is liberated and we can return home. All of our land. Palestinian resistance has a long and diverse history. 100-year history. It has historically included everything from non-cooperation, fighting to stay on one's land, art, literature, protests, work strikes, boycotts, hunger strikes, underground schools, intifada milk, armed resistance to the military, and armed resistance to settlers. And I will say again, what is happening in Palestine right now is unprecedented. What we are seeing is simultaneous, popular, full-spectrum resistance throughout colonized historic Palestine in areas occupied in 1948 and areas occupied in 1967, on the streets of Lid, in Haifa, in Al-Quds, in Jenin, in Khalil, in Gaza. One popular resistance. And as part of that popular resistance right now, one of the primary forces effectively confronting genocidal settlerism in Palestine has been the armed resistance. The armed resistance, I'll say it again. This isn't wishful thinking. By the end of the Second Intifada in 2005, numbers of incoming settlers decreased by 72%. More than 700,000 Israeli citizens lived abroad. Both the economy and tourism in Israel were shattered. Why? Nish. Because the Second Intifada was an armed Intifada, targeting both soldiers and settlers in both 48 and 67 occupied Palestine. Because no one wants to live in a war zone and if they don't have to, and settlers don't have to. They have a choice. How can we as Palestinians here support Palestinians fighting back home? And how will our comrades from other struggles show meaningful solidarity for Palestine at this moment? My generation, I'm old, a little bit old. My generation has protested the assault on Jenin, Gaza, the Jordan Valley and Al Quds, and against the wall, and a variety of other Zionist monstrosities. But marching without consequences for unmet demands, it is not resistance. It is not protest. It is a parade. When we march in the streets, what cost are we exacting on the oppressor? What are our demands, and how will we assure that they are realized? What happens after the protest? What risks are we still willing to take in our liberation work? We are not cheerleaders here. This liberation for everyone. We are part of the struggle. How will we make sure this unprecedented historic moment does not slip by? There is a lot of work to do. We can start by amplifying the message that Palestine, is one land. We are one people. This is one struggle from the river to the sea. Communities to one that centers land, reclaiming all of our historic land. Let us work to help people here understand that Zionism is a form of white supremacy and all those working for justice should reject it. Let us demand complete divestment from Israel with consequences to those politicians who don't get with the program. We are no longer allowing progressive except Palestine politicians to speak. We will remember what you do at this moment. Did you side with white supremacy or did you side with us? Israel. And lastly, let us show our unconditional support for the full spectrum of Palestinian resistance back home, including our armed Palestinian resistance, which is the primary force that has kept our struggle for liberation alive. We're a message to settlers. If you steal our land or hurt our people, you won't be safe. The war you have imposed on us will be brought back to you. To be isolated, they want you in the diaspora and the solidarity community to support only forms of resistance where Palestinians died. Don't fall for that colonial bullshit. Don't help Israel with conditional solidarity that isolates our resistance. The more people who publicly support the full range of our popular resistance openly, its methods, and its right to fight, the closer we move toward liberation. Please, community, we are creative people of conscience and critical thinkers. Let's seize this moment, regroup, really look critically at ourselves and our work for Palestinian liberation. Let's abandon solidarity tactics which haven't worked. Let's struggle together to build something new. Free Palestine!
Amazing. We're winding down with the speaker list, so here is Salma Shawwa. Yes. Palestinian in Boston, born and raised in Gaza. She is a forward thinker who pushes to preserve Palestinian embroidery through the Gaza-based initiative Anat International.
So this is my second time I'm here this week. I know that we're all very exhausted from processing, and on top of processing, we're having to educate people about what's going on, for 73 years now, but more so this week, right? And I want to keep this really simple, and just tell you guys that it's super important to keep our spirits high this week and the weeks after. Please keep showing up and please keep educating people. I've had to do my fair share in my workplace. I had to navigate it this week, explaining to people the settler colonialism that we go through and receiving little to no empathy. But I urge you all and I implore you to keep fighting and to keep raising awareness and sharing and boycotting. And on the topic of spirits, I just wanted to share a personal story today. And I hope I don't cry because I want you guys to hear my story. Yeah? Like that? Okay. I don't need my phone. So yesterday, there was a headline that my dad's building got bombed. And I thought it was my family that died. But thankfully it wasn't my family, it just was the building. And I called my dad freaking out, crying, thinking I lost my family while I watched live on television. And people were calling me, bombarding me with messages, asking, what's up with your family? Is your dad okay? I had no clue what's happening. And I know that in this audience, there must be a lot of people from Gaza who have family back home who are stressed the fuck out, watching buildings being bombed, probably your own buildings, just like I experienced yesterday. And it's terrible. And I was thankful that it wasn't my parents, but the 5 minutes on FaceTime before my mom picked up the phone killed me. I thought I was gonna die. I just wanted to end it all. But she picked up and she said they were okay. And because this is a story about spirit, my dad's spirit was really high up given the circumstances. And he looked at me on FaceTime when I was breaking down and said, don't worry, because we'll rebuild it even more beautiful. This is the story of Palestine, and this is the story of Gaza in particular. We've had a ton of these attacks on Gaza. They're relentless. It's been going on for 15 years, this blockade. And I'm here today to reassert, just like Saturday, and just like we've been reasserting since 1948, that what we demand is not humanitarian aid only. We demand a complete lifting of the deadly siege on Gaza, number one. And a free Palestine, that's number two. And last but not least, a free world, because this colonialism in Palestine is happening here in America, Gaza, it might not be physical apartheid or physical colonialism, it's ideological, because Western norms and Western power still is the norm. And the West kills, maims, and rapes in the name of what? Just because our lives are cheap. The brick in Notre Dame, it is worth way more than people dying in Gaza. That's the reality of the world we live in. So I'm asserting that my third demand is that with a free Palestine, we will get a free world, and all oppressed people will be liberated through Thank you all so much for showing up, and please keep showing up, keep going to these rallies, bring up this conversation in your workplaces. Mine has not been kind about it, but I'll keep pushing and I'll keep working towards it. Even though I'm exhausted, I'm traumatized, and I'm drained, I'll still keep pushing because I'll do it for Palestine.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Sorry. Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
We will free Palestine!
We will free Palestine!
Within our lifetime!
Within our lifetime!
We will free Palestine!
We will free Palestine!
Within our lifetime!
Within our lifetime!
From the river to the sea!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
Palestine will be free!
And from the river to the sea!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
Palestine will be free!
Amen in my year! Palestine Arabian!
Palestine Arabian!
Amen in my year! Palestine Arabian!
Palestine Arabian!
Wait, thank you guys so much. I think we have one more speaker from Sheikh Jarrah. Hani? Is Hani here? Hani? If you're here, please come to the stage, Hani. Hani. Please welcome Hani.
Actually, it's a little more complicated. I last saw my grandfather alive in Sheikh Jarrah, which is where my family had a home. And that home no longer exists within our possession. And that is the story of Palestine, Jerusalem, the West Bank, and pre-48 Palestine as well. I have a few points that I'd like to weave into a message or two. When I get to the end of the points, I'm almost certain my voice will crack. You'll see why. First, a thank you. A thank you to everybody who's here, everybody who organized today, and the other people around the world in more than 100 cities on this planet who are standing in solidarity with the human rights of the Palestinians. They're saying not that they care about Palestinians and Palestine, they care about human beings, and they are being humane. The thank you especially goes to the young leaders who are behind the fact that we're here today. When you look around most of the world, not all the leaders, but many of the leaders are children. When I look around here today and elsewhere, what I notice and what I realize is that the children are leaders. And that is critical for the future of this world and planet. And a huge debt of gratitude to people who are courageous because they go against what you might call their tribe. There are many people of a Jewish heritage or persuasion, and they will stand up for Palestinian rights because they care about human rights. We're doing this in Boston, in front of one of my favorite buildings in the world, the Boston Public Library, a beautiful place of learning and enlightenment. And Boston is, of course, the birthplace of the US Revolution. It is the place where, ultimately, a country began that turned into the uni-power of the world. And what we can do here today is something that can be done in the United States of America. It cannot be done by Palestinians where they live, where they were born, and where they grew up. So we are enormously lucky, and we are here in the cradle of the revolution. The sad part is that given the incredible history of the US, the incredible magnanimity, the bravery, the power of the American people, somehow, in one part of the world, the US has become associated with persecution. The Human Rights Watch, only I think a couple of weeks ago, has published a report where they detail, with incredible research, how, according to international law, the Israeli actions vis-a-vis the Palestinians amount to the crimes, not just the misbehavior, the crimes of apartheid and persecution. It is sad to see that the country that gave birth, that was given birth to through the revolution, is now associated with an entity which acts completely contrary to US principles. And that has to stop. My personal story is about Sheikh Jarrah. And I'm going to try to make it really quick. There are many ways you can lose your land in Palestine. One of them is eviction. And all of the rocketry and the drama and the death and the destruction began with yet another episode after so many decades of a relentless push to evict people out of their homes with a shambolic legal process. But there are other ways as well. Security is an excuse. Security is another excuse. Land is taken for security, and before you know it, within weeks, months, years, it's given away to settlers or to another party. That's the second way you can lose your land. A third way you can lose your land is how we lost our home in Sheikh Jarrah. If you are not in Jerusalem for a certain amount of time, you lose your residency. If you lose your residency, you cannot take title to property. And that's how we lost our land. It's completely unacceptable because it's a completely different story for anybody who wants to come from Australia, Russia, you name it. You would then, if you have the right religion, heritage, ethnicity, you could buy my family's land, my family's home. We ultimately lost it because my father could not inherit his father's home, and that's unacceptable. That is the story of Sheikh Jarrah from decades ago. The story has not changed, not one little bit. After decades, nothing has changed. And honestly, America is better than that. Which is going to take me to my last point, if you will. There's an expression that goes, if China sneezes, the world gets a cold. If the US sneezes, a part of the world can break. And when it breaks, people get hurt. And as far as I'm concerned, in this specific area of Palestine, the US has been sadly sick, in contrast with its amazing resources and capabilities and sentiments in almost every other field. That is, of course, the story of the government, not the story of the American people. And I'm going to leave with just one last quote from a hero. He's an African American. He's passed away recently. I think he was chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. And when he stood up to the previous administration, his words were simple. He said, America is better than that. America has to be much better than that. By simply sticking to its own principles, it would completely change its policy vis-a-vis the Palestinians in Palestine. So, not only is America better than that, but because of all of you, America is going to be better yet. And that's my wish.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. We're gonna have two more speakers, I promise. That's it. Khalas. I think you guys are you want to chant, as do I. So let's welcome Ahmed Kawash, 43-year-old, not 43, 43 years in Palestinian organizing in America, a Palestinian elder. Please welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. I don't say too much, to be honest with you. I'm getting old for this, but you guys gave me an inspiration. Last week was awesome. Okay? Since the whole thing started, since Ramadan, the Israelis thought this is going to be like 2-3 weeks and the Palestinians will surrender. But they did not know that the Palestinian will never kneel down to anybody but Almighty God. If you want to see Palestinian kneeling down, go to the church or go to the mosque in the time of prayer. This is the only time Palestinians kneel down. Abu Ubaidah, I love you. Because you promised and you delivered. Abu Ubaidah, ya Habib. اضرب تل أبيب. Abu Ubaidah, ya Habib. اضرب تل أبيب. Abu Ubaidah, ya Habib. اضرب تل أبيب. You know what knitting means? It means filth. This is what Netanyahu is. Netanyahu, Hitler are the same. The only difference is the name. Thank you, I love you all. Inshallah. Thank you.
All right. The last speaker is Dina Kobaisi from Harvard Palestine Solidarity Committee. Please welcome Dina.
I'll keep this short just because I know we all want to get to chanting. But a little more than a year ago today, I was here in the same spot with a much smaller crowd than this, fighting against Trump's plan to increase annexations. Looking at